There are fewer than 2,900 Bricklin SV1s left on the planet. Every single one was built in New Brunswick, Canada, with government funding. Right now, you can buy one for under 35,000 Canadian dollars, less than a base Toyota Camry. What I call the Canadian collector blind spot means the cars with the most compelling ownership story in this country are still priced like nobody noticed. Today, that changes. The Beaumont SD396 is the most powerful true muscle car Canada ever produced. It combined the body of a Chevrolet Chevelle with the interior of a Pontiac GTO and an engine from Chevrolet's performance division, and almost nobody outside Ontario has heard of it. Average condition examples trade at 45,000 to 57,000 Canadian dollars. A comparable Chevelle SS396 in the same condition costs 85,000 to 110,000 Canadian dollars. You are looking at 40 cents on the dollar for an arguably rarer, more Canadian car. General Motors of Canada launched the Beaumont brand in 1962 for Canadian buyers only, sold through Pontiac and Buick dealers in Ontario. The SD396 Sport Deluxe 396 cubic inch big block was built at GM's Oshawa, Ontario facility. By 1969, GM shut the brand down entirely, folding buyers into the mainstream Chevelle and Le Mans. That decision is why these cars are so obscure today, and so underpriced. A 1968 to 1969 Beaumont in solid driver condition runs 24,000 to 33,000 Canadian dollars, according to Haggerty's price guide. A 1968 Chevelle SS396 in equivalent condition starts at 65,000 Canadian dollars. Same drivetrain, same engine, same transmission. The discount is entirely the market's ignorance of the Canadian badge, not a reflection of the car. Robert Deschamps, a retired engineer from Hamilton, Ontario, bought a 1968 Beaumont SD396 in 2021 for 28,500 Canadian dollars and had it appraised 2 years later at $41,000. Nobody at shows knows what it is, he told Classic.com. They walk up, read the badge, and the look on their face, that's the whole point. Once awareness catches up with rarity, the discount closes. The Beaumont is not undervalued because it is inferior. It is undervalued because it is Canadian, and the collector market hasn't fully processed that yet. Car number 9 has first-generation examples already clearing 72,000 Canadian dollars at auction, and driver-quality cars still available for under $30,000. Pontiac Parisienne. The Pontiac Parisienne was sold exclusively in Canada from 1959 to 1982, a full-size Impala-based Pontiac that American buyers could not order from any dealer anywhere. First-generation examples have sold for $148,500 US at auction. Driver-quality second and third-generation cars are still available between 12,000 and 30,000 Canadian dollars. Built at GM's Oshawa, Ontario plant, the Parisienne used Chevrolet Impala platforms with Pontiac-specific styling, a premium product with no equivalent south of the border across 5 generations and 28 years. Clean, low-mileage examples are still surfacing in BC and Alberta, where road salt did less damage than in Ontario and Quebec. Classic.com places the average Parisienne sale at roughly 33,700 Canadian dollars. Second-generation convertibles average closer to 42,200 Canadian dollars. A 1963 Chevrolet Impala convertible in equivalent condition routinely sells for 55,000 to 75,000 Canadian dollars. Virtually identical mechanicals, stronger Canadian provenance, half the price, because buyers are chasing the American badge. That gap is not justified by the cars. It is justified only by the marketing history, and marketing history fades once collectors start paying attention. A 1963 Pontiac Parisienne 4-door hardtop with 47,800 original kilometers was listed near Peachland, British Columbia in 2024 for 11,900 Canadian dollars. Senior-owned, garage-kept every winter. Cars like this survive across the dry western provinces precisely because Ontario and Quebec winters consumed the eastern fleet. The survivors are in BC, Alberta, and Saskatchewan, still priced like project cars. The Parisienne is the cleanest illustration of the Canadian collector blind spot. Identical mechanical quality, stronger rarity, weaker name recognition, and a price reflecting the last factor only. Car number 8 was built by a man with a vision, government funding, and gull-wing doors, and only 2,854 of them exist on the entire planet. Malcolm Bricklin convinced the government of New Brunswick to co-fund a sports car factory in St. John in 1974. The car had gull-wing doors, a color-impregnated composite body, an integrated roll cage, and energy-absorbing bumpers. 7 years before the DeLorean. Average sale price today, 31,000 to 42,000 Canadian dollars. The highest recorded sale was 101,000 US dollars for a pristine 1974 example. Fewer than 3,000 exist. The SV1 was manufactured in St. John and Minto, New Brunswick, with partial provincial government funding. Production ended after 2 model years due to quality control issues and financing shortfalls, meaning the total pool of surviving cars is fixed forever. No more will ever be made. No factory exists to make them. Every SV1 alive today is one of fewer than 3,000 that will ever exist. Hagerty's 2025 bull market list valued a 1981 to 1983 DeLorean DMC-12 at approximately 102,500 Canadian dollars. Similar gullwing drama, similar production numbers, far less compelling origin story. The Bricklin is priced at roughly 1/3 of the DeLorean despite sharing every headline characteristic that makes the DeLorean collectible. A 1974 Bricklin S51 in safety green was listed through Gateway Classic Cars of Detroit in early 2026 for $31,000 US, an original AMC-powered example with all 4 hydraulic door cylinders confirmed functional. That functionality is the single largest factor separating a drivable SV1 from a garage sculpture. The window for sub $45,000 Canadian dollars examples is closing as DeLorean awareness drives curiosity toward comparable gullwing alternatives. The only gullwing sports car ever built in Canada, with a production run small enough to fit inside a mid-sized hockey arena, it is priced like a novelty. It should be priced like a national artifact. Car number 7 is a car most Canadian enthusiasts have walked past at shows without a second look, because it wears the wrong badge for its rarity. Ford Meteor Montcalm. The Ford Meteor was sold exclusively through Canadian Mercury dealers from 1961 to 1966. Never sold in the United States, never sold anywhere else. The Montcalm was the premium trim, a full-size Canadian luxury car with Galaxy underpinnings, distinct enough that American Ford experts routinely misidentify it at shows. The Meteor filled a mid-market slot in Ford Canada's Mercury Lincoln dealer network that had no direct American equivalent. The Montcalm convertible is the rarest of the line, and decades of Ontario road salt have further reduced the surviving pool. Barn Finds documented active Canadian Meteor listings as recently as February 2026. These cars still surface from estate sales in rural Manitoba and Saskatchewan. Meteor Montcalm convertibles in drivable condition are available in the 18,000 to 28,000 Canadian dollars range, roughly half the price of a comparable 1963 Ford Galaxy 500 convertible at 45,000 to 60,000 Canadian dollars. Same FEV8 drivetrain, identical parts availability, half the price, because the badge says Meteor, not Ford. Hagerty's profile of Canadian-built classics notes Meteors attract consistent attention from enthusiasts who cannot place the badge. That unfamiliarity is a market inefficiency. Once a car becomes a quiz question at a car show, it typically becomes a bidding war at auction within a decade. The Galaxy went through that cycle. The Meteor is at the beginning of it. The rarest full-size Ford product ever sold on the North American continent, still findable for less than a used pickup truck. That will not be true in 5 years. Before I get into cars 6 through 1, which includes a Quebec-built muscle car that embarrassed the Mustang Cobra so badly that Ford pulled its own product from sale, hit that subscribe button. Next week, I am covering which Canadian classics are already clearing 100,000 Canadian dollars at auction and why the window on these cars is measured in months, not years. You need that video before you make any purchase decision. Now, car number 6. The 4th generation Camaro Z28/SS and the Pontiac Firebird Trans Am, Quebec-built icons still priced like used cars. Every single 4th generation Chevrolet Camaro and Pontiac Firebird ever built, from 1993 to 2002, was assembled in Canada. Not some of them, all of them. Every Z28, every SS, every Trans Am, WS6, every Firehawk rolled out of the Sainte-Thérèse plant in Quebec. A clean 2002 Camaro Z28 SS 35th anniversary is still available today for $38,000 to $45,000 Canadian dollars. General Motors moved F-body production to Sainte-Thérèse, Quebec in 1993, where it stayed until the plant closed August 27, 2002. The Globe and Mail described it as the only Canadian light vehicle assembly plant outside Ontario, with workers rated among the most efficient in North America. The 35th anniversary Crystal Camaro SS had a total production run of 3,369 units. Only 369 stayed in Canada, a Canadian exclusive collector car hiding inside a recognizable American nameplate. Auto Trader Canada documented a 2002 Camaro Z28 SS 35th anniversary with 85,000 original kilometers in Regina, Saskatchewan in October 2024, asking under 28,000 Canadian dollars. A 1998 to 2002 Camaro SS with the LS1 V8, 325 horsepower, 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in under 5 seconds, is appreciating, not depreciating. In 1999, this car embarrassed the Mustang SVT Cobra so comprehensively that Ford pulled the Cobra from sale for the 2000 model year. That performance record does not get repriced downward. Jacques Lalonde, a 28-year Sainte-Thérèse veteran quoted by the Globe and Mail at the plant's closure, described workers told to be the best in North America, and they were. When you buy a 1998 to 2002 Camaro SS or Trans Am WS6, you are buying the output of one of the most efficient automotive assembly operations on the continent. That story is not yet part of the collector narrative. When it is, these prices will not hold. The only American muscle cars ever mass-produced exclusively on Canadian soil, still priced as if that fact does not exist. Car number 4 is a truck built in Ontario with a Canadian designation that no American buyer ever saw on a window sticker: the Mercury M-Series pickup and the Dodge Fargo, Canada's rarest working trucks. Ford sold trucks in Canada under the Mercury badge from 1946 to 1968. The Mercury M-Series is mechanically identical to the Ford F-Series of the same era, but carries a badge never applied to any truck sold in the United States. A clean 1956 Mercury M100 in driver condition runs $22,000 to $35,000 Canadian dollars today. The equivalent Ford F100 starts at $45,000 Canadian dollars. Ford Canada's Mercury Lincoln dealer franchises needed a distinct truck product, creating a parallel line with unique badging, grille treatments, and trim that have no American equivalent. Barn Finds documented Mercury truck listings from Canadian sellers as recently as February 2026. Estate sales in rural Alberta and Saskatchewan continue surfacing examples that haven't moved since the 1980s. Hagerty data shows the vintage truck market appreciated 42 to 73% over the past 5 years. Classic trucks dominated SEMA for 5 consecutive years through 2025. A Mercury M-Series truck is a stock, unmolested example by definition, never restored because nobody knew to restore it. The 30 to 40% discount to the Canadian badge is a market inefficiency the truck collector community will correct. Barn Finds posted a 1966 Mercury M-Series pickup from a Canadian seller in early 2026, drawing 53 comments, many from collectors who had never seen a Mercury badged truck. When enthusiasts who have spent decades in the hobby say they have never encountered a car, the rarity is real. Ford's rarest North American product at a 30 to 40% discount to its American twin, in a segment every analyst has been calling a bull market for half a decade. The F100 has been climbing for years. The Mercury M-Series has the same architecture, the same engines, the same restoration parts network, and a Canadian story that the F100 simply cannot offer. That is the definition of an overlooked asset. Dodge Fargo. Chrysler sold trucks in Canada under the Fargo brand from 1936 to 1972, a name that appeared on no Dodge truck sold in the United States, mechanically identical to the Dodge D-Series and Power Wagon. A clean Fargo in driver condition runs $15,000 to $25,000 Canadian dollars. A comparable Dodge Power Wagon costs 2 to 3 times that amount. Built at Chrysler's Windsor, Ontario facility, the Fargo was discontinued in 1972 when Chrysler consolidated its Canadian and American truck lines. Every surviving Fargo is now at least 54 years old, with the best examples preserved in Western Canada where working truck culture outlasted the road salt. A 1968 to 1972 Dodge Power Wagon in driving condition averages $45,000 to $65,000 Canadian dollars at Canadian collector auctions. The equivalent Fargo runs $18,000 to $28,000 Canadian dollars, a $25,000 to $35,000 gap for identical drivetrain, chassis, and capability. Hagerty's 2026 bull market list flagged the Dodge Ram Charger as a rising value play. The Fargo starts from an even lower baseline. Car Gurus Canada's 2025 Vintage Car Guide described Canadian exclusive trucks like the Mercury and Fargo as a piece of automotive history nearly impossible to find anywhere else in the world. A Fargo is a Canadian-only object. You cannot find one at an American auction or sell one to a collector who grew up wanting it. The entire collector pool is Canadian and Australian, and that concentrated demand will eventually show up in the price. The rarest Chrysler truck nameplate ever built, at less than half the price of its mechanical twin, because the badge says Fargo, not Dodge. The Acadian and the Beaumont SD396, convertible, the entry point, and the destination. The 1966 to 1967 Pontiac Acadian was the last standalone Acadian before GM absorbed the brand. Built at Oshawa, Ontario, and sold exclusively in Canada, it used the Chevy 2 Nova platform with Canadian-specific trim. Driver quality examples are available below $20,000 Canadian dollars, and the trend line is moving in one direction only. General Motors launched Acadian in 1962 as Canada's compact car answer, badged for Canadian dealers only. What makes the late Acadian compelling in 2026 is the convergence of growing collector awareness and the steady disappearance of unrestored originals as Ontario Barn finds dry up. A clean 1966 to 1967 Acadian in driver condition runs $14,000 to $22,000 Canadian dollars. a mechanically identical 1966 to 1967. Chevy Nova SS trades at $35,000 to $55,000 Canadian dollars. The Nova's premium is entirely brand recognition. The Acadian will follow the Beaumont's appreciation curve. As awareness of one Canadian exclusive GM brand rises, it raises the floor on all of them simultaneously. Keith Muirhead, a Haggerty Drivers Club member from Guelph, Ontario, has spent 3 years documenting surviving Acadians. In a 2024 interview with Haggerty Canada, he noted numbers matching examples are quietly disappearing, not because they're being bought, but because they're being scrapped when estates don't know what they have. That is the exact dynamic that preceded the Beaumont price run. The Acadian is the entry point into Canadian classic car collecting, accessible pricing, strong Ontario provenance, and a value curve that mirrors every Canadian GM brand that came before it. The Beaumont was ignored, then it wasn't. The Parisienne was ignored, then it wasn't. The Acadian is next in that sequence, and right now it is still at the beginning of the curve. If car number 2 is the entry point, car number 1 is the destination. Beaumont SD 396 convertible. Haggerty's price guide lists the 1968 to 1969 SD 396 convertible, L34 engine, 350 horsepower, at a number 2 condition value of $81,800 US, approximately $111,700 Canadian dollars. This is a car you have almost certainly never seen at a show, the most powerful convertible ever produced exclusively for the Canadian market, and most enthusiasts still cannot tell you what a Beaumont is. Built in Oshawa, Ontario, sold at Pontiac Buick dealers across Canada, available nowhere else. The Haggerty data confirms the market has already found the top examples. What remains are the drivable survivors not yet through a serious collector's hands, still trading in the $40,000 to $60,000 Canadian dollars range. A 1968 Chevelle SS 396 convertible in number 2 condition is valued at $120,000 to $150,000 Canadian dollars. The equivalent Beaumont SD 396 convertible, same drivetrain, same performance, stronger Canadian rarity, sits at $111,700 Canadian dollars according to Haggerty's own data. The gap is narrowing every year, and unlike the Chevelle, there is no American supply pool to draw from. Every SD 396 convertible that exists was built in Ontario. The market for Chevelle SS convertibles runs deep into the United States. The market for Beaumont SD 396 convertibles is entirely Canadian. When the last one surfaces from a Canadian estate, there are no more, anywhere. A retired Windsor, Ontario collector bought his 1969 SD 396 at a farm auction in Chatham, Ontario for $31,000 in 2019. Nobody in the room knew what it was. I knew what it was. Appraised in 2023 at $52,000 Canadian dollars. That $21,000 gain in 4 years on a car that still drives to shows is the Canadian collector blind spot working exactly as described. Factory muscle, convertible rarity, Ontario provenance, 6-figure ceiling already confirmed by Haggerty. The floor is still accessible, the ceiling is already proven. The Canadian collector blind spot is real, it is measurable, and it is closing. Every car on this list, from the Acadian at $15,000 Canadian dollars to the Beaumont SD 396 convertible at $111,700 Canadian dollars, is priced below its American mechanical twin, despite stronger rarity and stronger Canadian provenance. The market corrects these gaps. It always does. The question is whether you are positioned before or after the correction. If you are evaluating a classic car purchase in Canada in 2026, here's the actionable takeaway. The window on driver quality examples of every car in this list is measured in years, not decades. These are not theoretical appreciating assets. 3 of them already have Haggerty data showing the move is underway. The Beaumont and Bricklin in particular have documented price trajectories already in motion. Which of these 10 surprised you most? The Bricklin priced below a DeLorean, or the Beaumont SD 396 convertible already in Haggerty's 6-figure range? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every one. Next week, the Canadian classics already clearing $100,000 Canadian dollars at auction, and the ones about to follow. You cannot miss that. Thanks for watching.